the critical message. We hope you enjoy this video, and that you will forward it along to your friends and family members. In the spirit of the original communication, I will read it in the same manner it was sent to us. Nothing has been removed from the story, and nothing has been added to it. Please pay close attention to what I have to say as I am about to read it. It started on the 15th of March, 2020. My experience with COVID began at the very beginning of the pandemic, when I was first exposed to it. I was 69 years old at the time. An explanation of how I became infected is beyond my ability to provide at this time. I was quickly airlifted to the Valenciennes Hospital Center in France, where I was treated promptly. As time progressed, it became clear that there was no improvement, and the doctors were unwilling to continue. My condition deteriorated at an alarming rate, and at one point, the physicians suggested that I remain in quarantine till I get well. I spent 2 months in a medically induced coma. My family's stigmatization of me was the greatest source of pain for me during this period. I felt as if the entire universe had come crashing down on me at the same time. My condition was getting worse and worse as the days passed. I was struggling to breathe. My whole body was trembling. I was so weak that I couldn't even eat or stand for a lengthy period of time. The physicians were called in quickly to attend to my reactions. My dizziness escalated to the point where I was having blackouts. And all of a sudden, I heard them yell from a far distance. "He can't breathe any longer. He can't breathe any longer. It looks like he has run 3 marathons. We must put him in an artificial coma or his heart will give out." At that point, I was experiencing nausea and began to perspire profusely. I couldn't fathom what was happening to me at the time. My limbs were trembling, my body was rigid as a board, and my eyes were rolling back in my head. My brain shut down. I felt absolutely out of place in this situation. I began to have the sensation that I was in another dimension. And I found myself in a white, lovely, and light space that seemed to have no boundaries. I was in a state of intense love and feeling when this happened. I was in such a wonderful mood. Suddenly, my attention was drawn to an arc-shaped arrangement of silhouettes of both men and women just in front of me. That was when I realized I was no longer on Earth. These sensations were completely different from anything I've ever felt in life before. The feeling of completeness and happiness is reassuring and soothing. In augmented reality, I felt more alive and powerful than I had ever been before. Suddenly, I was wrapped by an enveloping piece of music. That piece of music was absolutely beautiful and pure. Unlike any other music I have ever heard in my life. At this point, I was startled by the sound of a loud voice calling my name, Martin. I turned my head towards the direction where the voice was coming from. But I was so scared and terrified when I saw someone who looked as bright as the sun. I was unable to look at him in the eyes. Then, he said to me, "I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious to." I remained in a state of apprehension, not knowing what might happen to me. Instead, he approached me and grabbed my hand, saying, "Come with me and I will show you a mystery." It was at that point that I recognized it was the Lord speaking to me. He took me to what appeared to be a deep valley. Then I noticed someone seated on a horse, which seemed so strange. He held a sword in his hand and had the look of a monstrous beast. He was so terrifying. and he was given the authority to unleash a global pandemic of some unknown illness. His forehead had an inscription of death on it. I was so afraid upon seeing him that I had to grip the Lord's hand quite tightly. As a result, the Lord spoke to me and said, "This beast has been given the authority to inflict a dreadful illness on the entire universe, which will be extremely devastating more than before. This entity will inflict horrific sores and lesions on the mortal bodies of the people living on Earth. This pandemic would kill more people than the previous one. The ways of humanity have not yet changed. And as a result, the prospect of what lies ahead is terrible. Now, go and tell the world about my fury, so they can turn from their wicked ways and avoid my vengeance." And at that moment, I felt a force that drove me to a destination I had not desired. And as I opened my eyes, I noticed my body been wrapped and was about to be disposed of. It was now very evident to me that I had passed away. The Lord Jesus referred to the end time as birth pangs, which are becoming more acute and more constant as time progresses. As a result, God will allow things to escalate to the point of bringing about all kinds of tribulations in order for people to turn their faces toward Him. In fact, the objective of these afflictions is to put mankind under pressure so that they will give up their sinfulness and come to Christ for salvation.